Good morning. Today we are going to discuss human trafficking, what it is, how to identify someone who may be a victim, and for those who are victims of trafficking, how to get help. My name is Charlotte Waters, and I'm the Communications Director here at Legal Services of North Florida, and I will be hosting today's special Virtual Justice on the Block. Joining me today is LSNF's Equal Justice Works Fellow in Immigration Law, Daniela Donoso. And we also have Survive and Thrive Advocacy Center, also known as STACS, Executive Director Robin Hassler-Thompson. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. It's great to be with you.
Thanks, Charlotte.
Awesome. Thank you. So let's dive right in. Today is a special day. So it is, actually, why don't you tell us what today is, Robin?
Today is World Day Against Trafficking in Person. So it's a bit of a mouthful, but basically this is a global day recognized by the United Nations to really draw attention to the issue of human trafficking and to raise awareness. And I like to also say, inspire people to act to help end it.
That's wonderful. So if it's important to spread awareness, how do we even know what to look for or how to spot trafficking?
It's really one of those things where what we do, and let me just tell you a little bit what we do in the community. So one of the things that STAC does is we do direct work with human trafficking survivors and people who are at risk of being trafficked. That's how we've worked over the years with legal services and are so grateful for our partnership. In fact, at one point we had an office in your building, but we don't any longer, unfortunately. But, it's one of those things where you work with people in the community to, especially if people in the community are vulnerable, folks who are unhoused, people who suffer from discrimination because of the way our culture is, systemic biases, et cetera. There are all kinds of economically insecure folks. So what we do as an entity, as STAC, is to work with survivors of human trafficking and to work hard to educate our community so they can be fortified and not allow trafficking to happen within our, borders, within our area. So what we want to say is human trafficking is both sex and labor trafficking. One of the best ways to do something about it is to recognize what it is and to understand that, for example, sometimes when people hear human trafficking, they only think of sex trafficking, when actually globally, there's more labor trafficking in our world than there is sex trafficking. Both are horrendous. And we also see that survivors, when they come for services, have been both sex and labor trafficked. So it's important to realize that both phenomena occur. And then, in terms of recognizing it, what we like to say is if you are working with a vulnerable population, and now with COVID, people are more vulnerable than ever, both on health reasons and economically, you could potentially be one, helping to fortify a person and inform them so that they are not trafficked, not defrauded, not tricked into the situation. And then you can also know what to do to get help. So let me ask Daniela, what do you think, Daniela, in terms of this issue and why it's important and how do you spot it?
Yeah, thank you, Robin. No, everything you said, I totally agree. And, right now, when we think about those vulnerable populations and how someone can help, we often see a cycle, right, of abuse, of manipulation, of pain, and when we can spot something and help prevent, be on the preventative side of human trafficking, it can be life-changing, right? And there's so many great organizations, even here in Florida. When you mention labor trafficking, I automatically think of the Coalition of Immokalee Workers. Here in Florida, we have a lot of farm laborers, and this organization is getting on the preventative side because they understand that when someone who is undocumented, they are more at risk of being trafficked because of that vulnerability of not having their documents, of being threatened of deportation. And so when Coalition of Immokalee Workers, they are working to instill power into the community, into the workers themselves. And they have a worker-driven model to make sure that they're asking for water breaks and shade breaks and things that should be given to them anyway, right? Sometimes it's a question about human dignity. And so when we're thinking about how do we continue to spread awareness? We have to think about all of our everyday lives. And I know, and I love when you mentioned, the Slavery Footprint app, because all of us have right now slaves working for us, period, right? The clothes we wear, the food we eat, the shoes we have, even woodwork and tablecloths, anything that you can think of that you purchase as a consumer. We have so much power as consumers to help eradicate human trafficking.
I was just looking for the label I have for the chocolate bars that we worked on together and that you worked on with the FSU College of Law, to really show that there are businesses out there, and we have not gone afield, everybody. This is really important, because we do have a choice as consumers to buy goods and services that are trafficking and slavery free. So the one I'm thinking of is the Tony's Choco Lonely chocolate bar, who has a worldwide campaign to make sure that no chocolate that is consumed in our country, in our world, has been made with any hands that have been trafficked or forced into labor. Particularly in this case too, they focus on child labor. So know that that's absolutely out there. You know what, Daniela, when you're talking about that too, I like to think about how we can dispel myths around human trafficking.
Yeah.
So for example, we know that in terms of sex trafficking, often people don't realize that males are sex trafficked.
Mm-hmm.
And that they only may think of young children. They might think also in labor trafficking that it's only immigrants or people who are foreign nationals, but also U.S. citizens. So really looking at the scope of who could be trafficked or who has been trafficked in their past, and how the issue continues on is really important. So really, number one, if somebody is in a vulnerable population in any ways, if they have any kind of vulnerability, like say a substance use disorder, that's something to think about as well. Because again, traffickers will prey, will kind of insinuate, will get into somebody's life with big promises of help, of financial assistance, of I'll get you a job, I'll put a roof over your head, I'll help your kids. And then they lure them into really desperate situations that you can't escape from without danger. So it really is important today for people to realize, number one, what these myths are, number two, that you have power, and three, that, gosh, and what we've seen, Stack's caseload has tripled since the pandemic. And I don't know that we've talked about that, but we have seen survivors of domestic violence, victims of domestic violence, who part of their victimization is that their abusers are forcing them into sex trafficking. Those were the first cases, people who came to our attention during the pandemic, people escaping to our area. We've also seen, I think our caseload is 1/2 labor trafficking survivors now. So people who come from other areas, or people who are trafficked right in our own area here. So it's one of those things where the pandemic has created vulnerabilities, both health-wise and economically. And so I don't know about you all, but we're seeing that explosion.
That's actually a really great point. I wanted to kind of get an idea about how COVID-19 has affected these vulnerable populations. And it sounds like for Stack in particular, you guys have had just an enormous increase. What about at LSNF, Daniela? Have we seen anything, especially when it comes to COVID, affecting our cases?
Sure. And I like that Robin talked about the myths, right? Because people might think, oh, sex trafficking, the only legal issue is that they need the record expunged from prostitution, which sometimes that is the issue. But really, LSNF, when we're talking about legal issues with survivors of human trafficking, it could be anything from wage actions to family law to immigration to even name changes or identity theft, tax law. And one of the biggest ones right now is landlord-tenant law, right? The moratorium is going to end tomorrow. And, we're not sure exactly, we've already been overloaded with landlord-tenant cases, unfortunately. And at the end of this moratorium, we don't know, what that's going to look like coming into the fall. So there's an array of legal issues that affect survivors of human trafficking. And, as Robin mentioned, the victims of domestic violence, unfortunately, also on the rise, and how that could be just one part of their journey through this trafficking.
One of the things that it's making me think of with the eviction moratorium is a case I heard from a national organization where landlords are saying to women in particular, if you have sex to me, I won't evict you. If you have sex with me, I won't evict you. And when you think about that, you really have to think about, what are they doing? They are actually trafficking, because they are committing with force, fraud, or coercion, forcing somebody into a commercial sex act. In exchange for that commercial sex act, they can have a roof over their heads and over their children's heads. So sometimes people think about trafficking and being this international criminal organizations or whatever. It can be that small. It could be a parent trafficking a child for drugs because that parent's become addicted. So there are all kinds of things that could happen where we have to expand our understanding of what trafficking is, the legal scope of what trafficking is. Understand that if a child is induced to perform any commercial sex act, or in Florida, any labor, you don't even need to show force, fraud, or coercion. That child induced to perform that act is a victim of trafficking, and that person doing that inducing or inciting is a trafficker. So it's one of those things too. If you want to know more, you need to kind of take a deeper dive. I thank you for having our website at the bottom, because we have a ton of webinars, information. We have all kinds of stuff where anybody who wants to know more can just hop on our website and look under educational resources, as well as get some tools. We'd love for you to share information about this in your social media group and the rest.
That's awesome. Thank you, Robin. So, we've learned a lot about what human trafficking is, why awareness is important. It's probably a good segue. You mentioned about different areas of law that are affected by human trafficking. We don't necessarily know right off the bat, like, how does legal services fit into this? And so maybe Daniela, you can kind of discuss what our services are and what different angles there are around legal needs, and obviously something that we work with Robin and her team at Stack with as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So when one of our attorneys, has one of these cases, all of our cases are pretty sensitive, right? But again, when we're thinking about human trafficking, it may be a divorce, it may be the solution of marriage, it may be custody for the children. Again, it may be immigration, right? And when we're thinking about immigration, we're thinking of a trafficking visa or a U visa. That's for other victims of crime. And really, I think LSNF does a great job of wraparound services, right? We have an amazing partner like Stack, and so we absolutely use them as a resource. There's also the International Rescue Committee that we use as a resource here in Tallahassee. And so it's really important as, a legal service provider to, know that the survivor is going to also need mental health services. They're going to need other social agency services, and the more connections that you can have to make sure that these are wraparound, that this person's being cared for in the right way, because these cases can be really difficult. And the more, it takes a village, right? And so the more people that you have helping is always better.
And I'm glad you mentioned the IRC too, Daniela, because the IRC helped bring funding into our area, and we do work jointly with them. They have helped to fund Stack and also have funding for direct assistance to survivors. So, and that's over the short and long term. And I think it's important to realize that someone who, and I know of someone personally here that we've assisted who was trafficked when she was a teen, and to this day, when she applied for a job, her arrest record from those many years ago, she's in her 50s now, came up. And she had to go through so much. She already had gone through the clemency, through the Board of Nursing approval, et cetera. But that trafficking of her as a child has been there for decades. So thank you for mentioning all of the work y'all do, and that it is wraparound, because that, there are legal needs that will pop up over a person's lifetime that are important to notice and take care of, and let people know that they're out there, and there's help out there.
Just kidding. Sorry, I was muted. So thank you. That's good to know that there is this really direct line between what we're seeing and what Robin's seeing, and how legal services can aid not only the people that Robin sees, but how we can help them. So if someone feels that they're maybe a victim of trafficking or knows someone who is, Daniela, what are some actions they can take?
Yeah. Seeking out legal help is always advisable, right? Even if you're not sure. And then of course, using the local resources that we have, go to STAC's website, ask, take that phone call, send the email whenever you feel ready, and able to do that. But there are resources out here in Tallahassee.
And let's also mention the National Human Trafficking Hotline, the 888-3737-888, the National Human Trafficking Hotline. You can Google it or call that number, 24/7, multilingual. Will make a referral to groups like STAC anywhere in the country. In fact, they also have amazing resources. I just read 2 articles yesterday from them about how agricultural workers since the pandemic have been exploited. And those are people with visas, H-2A visas, have been exploited, 60 to 70% more than pre-pandemic. Also that, they have information, there was information there too about commercial sexual exploitation happening. Again, that's online, exploding because of the pandemic. And anyway, so that's a long way of saying the hotline is a great resource, and know that that's a number you can call if you have a question and you're like on vacation in North Carolina or something. You can just call and say, I just saw something funny. What's going on? You don't have to just think, be here, because you wear a lot of different hats as neighbors, as parents, as volunteers. Everybody can take this information and apply it in every phase of their life to understand someone might be in need, and you can connect them to help.
Right.
That's a great point. So we've included not only STAC's information below in the scrolling piece and LSNF's website, but we've also included the National Human Trafficking Hotline in the comments. So please look at that. Keep it with you. Like Robin said, you can easily Google it if you see something or if you feel threatened yourself. Definitely use that opportunity. So I want to thank you both so much, Robin with Survive and Thrive Advocacy Center, and Daniela here with Legal Services of North Florida. You guys have provided such wonderful information on why today is important and how we all can be part of that solution. So please check out STAC and LSNF online, again, using the links below. And we look forward to chatting with you guys online in the future. Have a good day, you guys.
Thanks a lot. You too, everybody. Bye. Thanks, Charlotte. Thanks, Daniela.
Thank you, everyone.